Miles sat in Shelby Costley's office and tried to look like a man who was earnestly attempting his best. He did this the way people try to look like they recycle, with posture and vague sincerity. Shelby's office was aggressively offline. The chair did not cradle you, it instructed you. The carpet had a color best described as public building. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, and Miles couldn't tell if it was meant to keep time or keep score. Shelby had her clipboard out, pen poised, expression calm in that way professionals have, like they've heard everything, and yet still need you to say it again in your own words so it can be written down and become official. "So," she said, voice gentle but firm, "how have you been doing since last week?" Miles knew this question was a trap with multiple exits. If he said good, the system would decide he didn't need help. If he said terrible, the system would decide he needed more help than he wanted. He aimed for the middle, struggling but coherent. A man at risk but polite. "I don't know," he said, rubbing his forehead. I don't feel safe." Shelby's pen slowed slightly. Unsafe was the golden word. Unsafe had a paper trail behind it. Unsafe turned feelings into action items. "What does unsafe mean for you?" Shelby asked. Miles talked about his studio apartment, the tiny kitchen, the sink that always seemed to contain evidence of his failure, dishes that appeared like they'd been placed there by a malicious roommate, the laundry that multiplied without his consent, the way his day would begin with him already behind, already tired, already irritated that life required maintenance. He did not say the truest part out loud, because the truest part sounded childish and shameful even in his own head. He hated responsibility, not in an edgy, rebellious way, in a drained, defeated way. He hated cooking. He hated cleaning. He hated the endless tiny tasks of adulthood, trash, groceries, phone calls, time management, like life was a job with no weekends and no supervisor to blame. What he wanted wasn't spiritual transformation. It was relief, official relief, SSI disability. A version of life where expectations were legally lowered and nobody could say, "You should really be doing more," without the government stepping in to correct them. Shelby listened, nodding like she was witnessing a weather report. "I think we should consider something more structured," she said at last. Miles felt his shoulders tighten. Structured was one of those words that sounded comforting until you realized it meant someone else decides. Shelby slid a brochure across the table. PROs. The brochure was glossy and cheerful, filled with people smiling at clipboards. The photos looked staged in that special way emotional wellness photos always did, like sadness could be cured by sitting in the correct arrangement. There were words like engagement and recovery, which made Miles suspicious. He'd never met a person who was actually recovering who used the word engagement casually. PROS is comprehensive, Shelby said. Support, structure, group programming. Miles's eyes snagged on the word group. Group meant circles. Group meant introductions. Group meant being asked to talk in front of strangers and then being stared at while you did it. Group meant people saying things like, "Thank you for sharing," even when they clearly wanted you to stop. "I've read about other programs," Miles said carefully. "Other options. More supportive." Shelby's expression remained calm, but her pen did that tiny thing pens do when someone has moved the conversation into a direction you didn't want. "We don't have to decide today," Shelby said. Miles knew what that meant. You will decide later, when you're tired. He nodded. He left the office. He walked out into the world feeling like someone had just reminded him that living required paperwork. Outside at the bus stop, Miles sat down on the bench and stared straight ahead, the way people do when they want to be left alone, but not so alone they have to think too much. That's when the man beside him spoke. "You just come from therapy?" the man asked. Miles looked over. Hoodie. Relaxed posture. A face that suggested he'd seen enough systems to stop expecting fairness from them. Miles laughed once. "Is it that obvious?" The man grinned. "Name's Park Avenue Pete." They rode the bus together, not in a buddy way, in a we are both passengers in the same slow-moving life way. At some point, Miles mentioned pros, mostly because the word was sitting in his brain like a pebble in his shoe. Pete snorted. Pros is group therapy with a fancy name, Pete said. Same circle, better brochure. Miles felt a warm jolt of validation. It's dangerous to feel seen by a stranger. It makes you start trusting them. What do you do? Miles asked. Pete shrugged. I used to work at a community residence. A group home? Miles asked. Pete met his eyes. Yeah, that's what it is. Those words stuck in Miles's mind like a song you don't even like but can't stop humming. Group home. The phrase sounded like relief, like surrender, like the ability to stop holding your own life up with trembling hands. That night, Miles returned to his studio apartment, the cramped little box where silence had room to echo, and every object seemed to accuse him of neglect. He stared at his sink, his laundry, his untouched groceries. He imagined his future as a string of chores he would never fully complete. He waited until it was a normal hour and called Pete. What's it like? Miles asked. Pete didn't romanticize it. That's what made his description so effective. Staff, Pete said. Schedules, rules, meals, meds, people who aren't safe on their own. Miles felt something shift inside him at that phrase. Aren't safe on their own, because it sounded like a key he already had. He hung up and sat in the dark thinking, that might be what I need. The next time he saw Shelby, he didn't say group home. He knew better. You don't walk into therapy and announce your goal like it's a heist. You plant seeds. You use language that opens doors without triggering alarms. I don't think I should be alone, he said. I feel unsafe. Shelby took that seriously because it was designed to be taken seriously. She suggested supportive apartments, places where you live alone but have check-ins, a middle step, a bridge. Miles toured one. It was clean, quiet, bright, and the quiet was its own kind of threat. The apartment looked like a place where you would be expected to wake up every day and decide what to do with yourself, which was Miles's least favorite activity, deciding. So I'd be alone? He asked. Well, you'd have supports, the person said. The word support sounded thin, like paper. Shelby introduced him to a social worker, Morgan Miller. Morgan was slightly younger than Miles, and she had the energetic optimism of someone who still believed forms and programs existed to help. Her smile arrived early. Her pen moved fast. She nodded at everything he said as if agreeing was part of her training. Miles noticed something else right away. Morgan wasn't sharp, not cruelly dumb, just easily guided. She seemed desperate to be helpful, and people who are desperate to be helpful are often desperate to be led. Morgan showed him more supportive apartments. Morgan praised them. Morgan said, "This is great," like she had rehearsed it. Miles stood in each doorway feeling the same thing. This is still my responsibility, just in a nicer wrapper. I don't feel safe, he said again, softer now. He let his posture slump. He let his voice sound tired. He watched Morgan react. Her eyes widened. She nodded quickly. The phrase worked like a lever. Later, Miles mentioned Pete, casually, like it had come up naturally, like this wasn't his plan. I talked to someone, Miles said. He mentioned community residences. I don't know, group homes. Morgan perked up immediately. Oh, she said. That could be a really good fit for you. Miles did not smile. You don't smile when you're trying to look desperate. He kept his face neutral, almost reluctant, as if Morgan were persuading him. Maybe, he said, letting her have it. Prose still happened in the background because Shelby kept pushing it and Morgan kept repeating it like a safe option. Miles went. Prose was exactly what he feared. Beige room. Chairs in a circle. A schedule on the wall. People sharing personal things in the tone you'd use to explain a parking ticket. A facilitator with a bright voice that made Miles feel like a child at a birthday party he didn't want to attend. And there was Pete, hoodie up, sitting like he was serving a sentence. Pete leaned toward him. Told you, Pete whispered. Fancy name, same circle. Miles almost laughed, and the fact that he almost laughed in that room felt like a small rebellion. After PRS, Miles told Morgan carefully that it didn't feel like enough. Morgan was ready. "I've been thinking about what you said," she said, "about the community residence idea. I think we should explore that." Miles let her believe it was her good judgment. Let her believe she was advocating for him. In a way she was, just not in the way she imagined. In October, Morgan arranged a tour of a group home. From the outside, the house looked ordinary, like it could contain family dinners and holiday decorations and arguments about the lawn. It looked too normal, which is often the first sign something is off. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and cooked food. There was a schedule posted on the wall, locked cabinets, a television murmuring to itself, residents drifting through the rooms like they were part of the furniture. Miles felt uneasy, but unease is not always a warning. Sometimes it's just a feeling you learn to ignore. "What do you think?" Morgan asked afterward. Miles thought about his studio apartment. He thought about the sink. He thought about the endless, lonely responsibility. "I think it could work," he said. He waited. October became November. November became December. Miles lived in a long hallway of time, each day similar, each day heavy. Finally, January 14th, the van arrived. They loaded his belongings. Staff spoke to him in the tone people use when someone is making a brave choice. "You're doing the right thing," they said. "We're going to help you get back on your feet," they said. Miles nodded like someone signing a contract he hadn't read carefully enough. They arrived around 10:30 in the morning. The moment he stepped into the house, his stomach dropped. It wasn't fear exactly. It was his body noticing what his brain refused to say. This is not a step. This is a landing. A man named Joseph Kane helped carry his things to his room. The room was small, clean, and had the permanent temporary feeling of a place designed for someone who might leave someday, but probably wouldn't. Then Esther Bloom sat with him and completed intake paperwork. Esther had a cheerful, trained kindness, the kind that felt like part of the uniform. "You're going to be with us for a while," she said. "How does that make you feel?" "Hopeful," Miles said. He was hopeful. He was also afraid. Those things can coexist when you're walking into a life you think you want. Dinner was at 4:30. Cowboy casserole. Noodles, cheese, pepperoni. A dish that tasted like it had been approved by committee. Miles ate it anyway, because hunger is not picky and neither is resignation. At the table, he met Nathan, barely 20, quiet and twitchy in the way young people are when they've learned not to draw attention. Nathan ate fast, eyes darting, as if dinner might be revoked. And then there was Jesse, about 45, talking continuously to himself in a calm voice, like he was narrating the world. "The dogs don't like the bees," Jesse said. "That's how you know." Miles paused with his fork in midair. "They go in your ears," Jesse continued, nodding. "The bees. The dogs try to warn you." Nathan nodded solemnly. Miles looked around for staff to correct it, redirect it, explain it. No one did. No one even seemed surprised. After dinner, everyone drifted into the common room. The television was on, but it felt like it was playing for the house, not the people. Miles sat stiffly on the couch trying to look calm. That's when a staff member looked at Theo. Theo had been sitting in the corner, quiet, face blank, like a person who had learned how to disappear while still being present. "Okay, Theo," the staff member said pleasantly. "Time to go put your thing on." Miles waited for clarification. None came. Theo stood up immediately, like the sentence had triggered something automatic. He followed the staff member down the hallway and into another room. The door closed. Miles leaned toward Nathan. "What does that mean?" he whispered. Nathan shrugged like it was obvious, like it wasn't worth explaining, like explanations didn't matter here. A few minutes later, Theo returned. He looked different, not dramatically, not like a transformation, just softer, slower, slightly puffy in the face, like he'd been crying without crying, like his edges had been rounded off. Theo sat back down and stared at the television. Miles felt something click inside him. A small, cold understanding. This place had procedures. Procedures you weren't told about. Procedures you were expected to accept. That night, Miles slept badly. The house never felt fully asleep. It felt like it was resting with one eye open. In the morning, he woke up wet. He sat up slowly, heart pounding, mind scrambling for explanations. Stress, change, nerves, the unfamiliar bed. He told himself this was temporary, a one-time thing. He stripped the sheets quickly, bundled them up, and tried to sneak toward the laundry room like a teenager hiding contraband. Esther appeared as if summoned. "Oh," she said gently. "Looks like you had a little accident." Miles opened his mouth to explain. She cut him off with kindness. "That happens to a lot of people here," she said brightly. "We have things that can help." The word help landed heavily now because he had seen Theo go put his thing on. He understood. Help here was not just support. It was a system. That evening, Miles sat on the couch in his pajamas. The television murmured. Jesse talked somewhere in the house. Nathan wandered in and out. Staff moved with calm authority. Miles watched it all the way you watch rain when you realize you forgot your umbrella. Not panicked, just quietly doomed. He thought about Shelby's office, the ticking clock, the brochure, the word unsafe leaving his mouth so easily. He thought about Pete's hoodie at the bus stop and the casual way Pete had handed him the idea. He thought about Morgan's eager nodding, her quick scribbles, her relief when he seemed to accept the plan. Miles had wanted relief. He had wanted less responsibility. He had imagined a lighter life. What he hadn't understood, what he understood now, sitting on that couch, was that he hadn't chosen less responsibility. He had chosen less control. And the true mistake wasn't moving in. The true mistake was believing he could hand himself over to a system. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Mommy Sarah's Story Time. If you enjoyed the stories, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Remember, my channel is not monetized, and I write most of the content myself. On occasions when I don't, it's sourced through emails from trusted contacts. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you're able to, consider making a donation to support our channel. Your support means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you.